In 2005, two college grads pitched a startup at Y Combinator and it got rejected. Not because the team was bad, but because it was a bad idea. The next day, Paul Graham called them back. Not for the app, for them. They pivoted, they faked their first users, and they got acquired 16 months later. And then they lost control of the site that would change the internet. This is the story of Reddit and what every founder and investor can learn from what seemed like a throwaway pivot. But before we jump in, if you're into real stories from inside the YC world and the venture ecosystem, hit subscribe. I share what most VCs don't, how deals actually happen, how founders get funded, and what you can learn from the ones who make it. Let me paint a picture. It's March 2005 in Boston. Y Combinator is about to run its very first batch. Just an experiment by Paul Graham, Jessica Livingston, Trevor Blackwell, and Robert Morris. No offices, no brand, no demo day, just a handful of hackers they think are worth betting on. That's where Alexis Ohanian and Steve Huffman come in. They pitch a startup called My Mobile Menu, a way to order Subway sandwiches from your flip phone. But it bombs. Paul Graham says no. For most founders, that's it. Back to Virginia, back to normal life. But then something rare happens.
Paul calls and I pick up and he says, listen, we like you guys, we just don't like the idea. It's too early for mobile.
Paul gives them a deal. Kill your startup and we'll fund you as people. Not for what you're building, but because of who you are.
If you're willing to kill this company a year in that you've been working on, we'll let you into the program.
That one sentence changed everything. A lot of investors say they bet on founders, not ideas. But here's what that actually looks like in the wild. A throwaway pitch, a dead-end market, two unproven founders who just wouldn't go away. The very next day, they're on a train back to Boston. No company, no code, just a shot. What happened next didn't just launch Reddit, it helped launch Y Combinator. Reddit was one of the first real tests of PG's biggest bet that picking relentless founders mattered more than picking perfect ideas. And when Reddit took off, that idea and YC itself suddenly looked much less crazy. Back in Boston, Paul Graham sits them down and gives them new marching orders. Steve was a power user of Slashdot. Alexis had dozens of tabs open every morning on his computer. They realized that there wasn't a front page of the internet. Reddit was born. Well, sort of, because nobody showed up. So they did what hungry founders do when no one's paying attention. They made their own momentum. They populated the site themselves, posting under fake usernames to simulate activity. Every upvote, every post was them. Eventually, real users tricked in, and when Steve took a day off, the front page updated without him. Reddit was alive. This wasn't a growth hack, it was survival. Early traction often looks fake, especially from the outside. It wasn't about faking demand, it was about seeding the loop. They weren't pretending people cared, they were designing an experience that would become self-sustaining. And that's the nuance most investors miss. Most people saw a dead website, but the right investor sees what the founders see, a loop that hasn't caught yet, but will. That's the bet. This is why early stage investing is hard, because real conviction requires proximity, and pattern matching doesn't work when the pattern hasn't been invented yet. So Reddit was starting to work, not because they had growth yet, but because the product was sticky, the loop was live, and the founders wouldn't stop. And here's the twist. Reddit wasn't just a win for Alexis and Steve. It was Y Combinator's first exit and their first real proof that this weird little accelerator could actually work. That put Reddit on the map, but it also put something heavier on the founders' expectations, pressure, and proof. 16 months in only, they got acquired by Condé Nast. On paper, a clear win, a validation, but inside the company, the cracks were already showing. The deal should have changed everything, but for Alexis and Steve, it felt more like a handoff than a celebration. They didn't get rich, they didn't get control, and suddenly, Reddit wasn't theirs anymore. Aaron Schwartz, who had joined the team, left soon after, frustrated by the culture clash and the lack of autonomy. Reddit became a corporate orphan. growing fast, but with no one really truly steering the ship. It drifted, it morphed, and for years, the founders could only watch as the site they created evolved and deteriorated without them. That's what hurt the most. Not the money, but the distance. Reddit was still alive, but it had stopped feeling like theirs. And here's the lesson. Early exits can look like success, but often they're just unfinished stories. If you're an investor, the lesson here isn't just timing, it's ownership. Who ends up with it and who doesn't. In 2015, Reddit was in chaos. The CEO resigned, mods revolted, toxic subreddits dominated the front page. The company was failing, it was directionless, divided, and honestly, on the verge of collapse. That's when Steve Huffman came back. Not as a prodigal founder, but as Reddit's last shot at survival. With Reddit at a breaking point, change felt like a death sentence, but staying the same, that would have killed it for sure. Steve took over. He rewrote the algorithm, he tore out the toxic features, he fought Reddit's demons from the inside. He knew about them because he built them. But survival wasn't a given. It took years. He modernized Reddit's codebase, redesigned the site, and launched a real ad platform. He empowered moderators, banned toxic subs, and rebuilt trust, one community at a time. By 2020, Reddit had grown into something new, a platform that looked chaotic on the surface, but ran on real community infrastructure below the surface. Not polished, not perfect, but undeniably alive. Reddit outlived almost every of its early competitors. Delicious, Dig, StumbleUpon, gone. But Reddit didn't just survive, it became infrastructure, a cornerstone of the modern web.
Reddit naturally kind of more maps to how humans are. And I think social media is the exact opposite.
That was always the dream. Not just a product, but a place. One built with its community and finally owned by them.
The reason we IPO'd was we wanted our users who have created everything interesting about Reddit, who feel a deep sense of ownership of Reddit, to have the opportunity to be actual owners.
Reddit didn't look like a unicorn in the beginning, but it taught a generation of investors that signal isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, sometimes it's weird, sometimes it's just two guys who just won't give up, even when everyone says so. If you looked at Reddit in 2005, you'd see a fake-looking community, a half-built product, and founders with no business experience. But if you actually watched, and I mean really watch, you'd seen something else. Relentlessness, creativity, and obsession. Not a polished startup, not a big TAM deck, just two guys building something that felt real, that felt like the internet.
And so Reddit at its core, it's just people. It's what people do naturally, which is come together around shared interests and passions.
Reddit wasn't trying to ride a wave. It was just human, messy, passionate, honest. That's what Paul Graham saw and what most investors still miss. Reddit didn't just prove something to the world. It proved something to Y Combinator. That conviction to bet on people before the traction or the market, it started here and it has shaped every batch since. Reddit helped YC realize it wasn't just funding startups, it was funding belief. I've seen this over and over. The idea can be bad. That doesn't necessarily scare me. What scares me is when the founders stop. Relentlessness, obsession, the ability to keep going when no one cares, and when it's hard, that's the real signal. I've backed founders with the wrong product, or the wrong timing, or the wrong everything, but they wouldn't quit. And that's when you start to see the real signal. Reddit didn't win because it had the perfect plan. It won because every post started at zero, just like them.
Every piece of content on Reddit is voted on, starts at 0 points.
That's how the product worked and how they worked. No hacks, no followers, just signal.
We actually predate social media. We predate the word.
Reddit wasn't chasing trends. It was quietly inventing the future of online conversations. Before Twitter, before Facebook, and long before anyone knew what a unicorn was. Unpolished, overlooked, and completely alive. So, what does this story really teaches us? It's not just about Reddit, it's about every company that starts out looking like a mistake. Because sometimes the throwaway pivot is the one that changes everything. If you've ever been underestimated or backed a founder who wouldn't quit, drop a comment. I want to hear your stories. And if you want more behind the scenes startup breakdowns like this, hit subscribe. I've got more coming. Thank you for watching.